So it is continued celebration. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. Sometimes we have to hear that story again from the Gospel of John. For those of you who might be, did your research before about what the lectionary text might be this week at church, you might say, hey, he's off. He's back to the first miracle that should have come just after the Epiphany. Yes, that's the Sunday that we kind of substituted the week before that was canceled because of the snow and the cold weather and the ice and those kind of things. And last week I took the two gospel texts that we had and put them all together. So some people are hearing what you heard last week this week. So see what all works out. We're going to be caught up now that you've heard all the texts so far, because we're back to the first miracle of Jesus in John when he turns water into wine. You know the old story whenever the guy gets stopped for drinking and he pulls the flask up and the officer says, what are you drinking? And it's full of wine. And he says, well, I just put water in it. The Lord's done it again. That might be a way to say that. And then I thought about this too. I was like, a lot of us are, we're typical Southerners that go to Southern parties. And so there's not always, wine is not one of those things that's served, especially maybe at a luncheon that we wouldn't be there. And so maybe to really make sure that we identified what Jesus is working with, this is the equivalency in the South of Easter lunch running out of deviled eggs. You know what I mean? This is serious business. That the good wine is gone. It's just disappeared. It's all drank. It must have been everybody was really hot day or really thirsty, or a whole lot more people showed up, because all of a sudden Jesus and his mama and the disciples get to come to the wedding too. So it's beginning to be a bigger affair than maybe they expected it might be. Maybe people just were ready to celebrate. And so they ran out of wine. And so Mary, knowing Jesus and who Jesus is, encourages him to do something about it. And he says, woman, what concern of that is to me and you? I mean, I can see Mary's look on her face like, well, I might like another glass of wine. But he says, my hour has not yet come. And she looks at the servants who are standing over, waiting and working, and says, do whatever he tells you. Wait a minute, he just said he wasn't going to do anything about it. And she looks at them and says, do whatever he says. That's a faith that I'm not sure that I know for certain I don't have. I'm a little old-fashioned. When somebody says they're not going to do something, I know they're not going to do it. And anymore, when people say they're going to do something, I'm not real sure until it's proven otherwise. But she says, go ahead and do what they said. And so Jesus tells the servants that are given the jars that are upside down for the rite of purification. After they've been used, they have to be fallow for a while so that we know that they're pure. They didn't have Dawn to take grease out of our way. They had to purify them in just kind of this aged method. And so they get them and they fill them back up. Some commentators suggest that it's somewhere between 120, 150 gallons of water. Some other commentators have suggested it's between 500 and 750 bottles of wine. 500 and 750 bottles of wine. So it would have been a lot of water. I mean, it's partly interesting how they got that much water that quickly in an arid climate without running water per se. That's a quandary we'll have. But they take the water and put it into the jugs, and then they take a bit of the water to the steward of the party. Can you imagine that? Well, I just put water in this jug, and I'm supposed to now take this to the steward and say, oh, look, I found you some wine. What an awkward feeling. And he does. And the steward celebrates the fact that this is the good wine. We've done that this week with the bulletins. I think we're okay. There's not as many here that we thought we might. We did about 85 bulletins. The first 5 bulletins we realized we'd left out, our first 30, 20 verse, we'd left out one of the songs. And so I said, well, just put those on the bottom of the stack. Nobody will ever know. So we're spread around. We still do that. It's kind of a coping mechanism. And so They did it. They actually did it. They took the water up to the wine steward, and he celebrates because of the quality of the wine. This is award-winning medal kind of wine. This is good stuff. And the party goes on and on and on. That's really part of the way that we realize life is when Jesus is in our midst and in our hearts and in our lives and even in our world. That it's different than just we're out, we're done, we're finished. This text, it starts off with on the third day. Well, I mean, who's got a calendar? You're keeping up with everything? Most commentators suggest that this on the third day is one of those references foreshadowing for us, the readers who know the true story of Jesus, that then the resurrection already know that. This is a reference to that, to being reminded instantaneously that on the third day means that because Jesus is there, there's life, there's presence, there's power in the world. It's kind of an interesting idea that the gospel writer might suggest. This is part of the party, this is part of the life, this is part of the bridegroom coming onto earth so that all may be made to continue the celebration of life because of the power of Christ in the world. Jesus took what had run out and gave new life, gave new power, gave full of energy, gave the holiness of God into the presence for all the people to continue to celebrate the love and the goodness of God in the world. And this wedding would continue to be celebrated and go on. Sometimes that's how it is when we, the church, show up in the world. This past week has been a lot of food for some of us around. Wednesday night, we went to the Greensboro Ministry and provided the meal, and they're, at 100-ish plus people now. We took our standard chicken, green beans, potato salad, and rolls, the classic college place recipe at Greensboro Ministry for the past dozen years or so. Everybody kind of knows what to expect and what to do. And we gave it to people and sent them, we took plates out to them and set them in front of them. And then we went back around with extra desserts that are, our congregation contributes, and they're all different, unique. People got to choose their desserts, which is, that empowerment in the folks that are on the streets who don't have a place to stay of their own can be able to have that choice in their life. It's a pretty important thing. I think it's a very wonderful thing that this congregation does. And then we took some extra chicken around and extra green beans around and extra potato salad around. And one guy, he was great. He said, "Man, y'all showed up to feed." He said, you were ready, and we really appreciate it. And then another said that was the best meal he had all week. Don't tell the other people who volunteer, but, pat ourselves on the back just a little bit and celebrate the goodness that we took to that place because we showed up, that they might not have had if we weren't there. And then we went over to First Baptist on Thursday night, some of us, to take the meal to the women who are staying in the winter shelter over there. So this is the second time we've done that. We've got 4 more opportunities for this. And they showed up, and we had a wonderful time of fellowship and of good food that we shared with people because we were there and because of sharing that love of God that's in our heart and in our minds and in our lives. Took it out into the world. There's a whole bench full of school supplies to go to Peck Elementary School. Some of the paper came from Centenary Methodist, that we remember them as they're beginning to merge with Irving Park. We continue to hold that congregation in their prayer. But they thought about us being able, our connection to Peck, to be able to share some of their abundance that they didn't need any longer, that they shared it and went to Peck. But we're also doing a $5 gift cards for student attendance at Peck Elementary. So we're headed for that. When you think about it, when you get the news cycle this week, which hasn't always met my ears with welcome, I'm reminded that, there's still goodness in the world, and we're still being a part of that, and we're still making a difference in people and children's and people's lives around us. I promise you, I know one thing: we can't fix it all. But because of the power of Christ in our lives and our congregation and working together to do what we can, we can't fix it all. But neither can the largest churches in America or any place across the world. but we can make a difference for those around us, that the party can go on, that the celebration and the love and the goodness of Christ being present in our world cannot, should not, will not be forgotten, because we continue to do the work of Christ in the world around us. And so as we come together around this table, we take that small piece of bread and that little bit of grape juice, and we remember the fact that Christ was one resurrected, and that Christ lives on, and Christ loves, and Christ's presence is still felt and known in the world because of the presence of communion and the work of the church and the work of each of us making a difference with so many people. Take heart, go on, know that the Christ who provided the good wine at the party at Cana also provides the love and the grace and the mercy for our lives. And that's our response, to be able to receive that and to share that with the world around us. All glory, honor, and power be to the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen.